Hey everyone, well, here we are once again. Thanks for tuning in to another Bona Training Camp video. Now let's go over Bona Remove and the first use of it, which is just to get polish off the floor. Sometimes you've just got a buildup of polish on the floor, or somebody accidentally put polish on the floor and didn't mean to. So now we've got to get the polish off the floor without affecting the finish that's underneath there already. So let's take a look at that process, what it entails, and how we get that polish off the floor. So the first thing you're going to want to do is a test area, because we want to make sure that the desired results are what we're going to achieve. So do a small test area in the place that the polish has been applied to it, the same as the rest of the floor. Don't do it in a closet or a corner or under a table that hasn't had any suspected product put down. Some of the things we're going to need a Bona power scrubber with the white brushes. We want a 3/8 inch microfiber roller, which the all white Bona roller works great for this. We want a paint tray. We want a Bona mop with the blue cleaning pads, some microfiber or terry cloth rags, a paintbrush for the edges and detail areas, maybe a bucket with some water in it, or at least make sure we have access to a sink where we can rinse off some of our pads and stuff, or obviously some Bona Remove and some deep clean for the power scrubber. And usage, when you're trying to calculate the amount of product that we're going to need, remember that with Bona Remove we should get about 700 to 800 square feet per gallon, and with Bona Deep Clean we should get about 100 to 300 square feet of mixed gallon of solution. So once we've got all of our tools and stuff gathered up and we've talked about our game plan, the first thing we want to do is shake up our Bona Remove, which means vigorously for about 15 to 20 seconds, just to make sure all the chemical components are properly and evenly mixed together. We're going to fill up our power scrubber with deep clean at our typical 4:1 ratio. And that means a half a gallon of deep clean into the scrubber. Fill the rest up with water, which is 2 gallons, and that gives us our 4:1 deep clean ratio. Then before we actually put anything on the floor, we want to make sure we vacuum it to get rid of any loose debris, dirt, anything that might accidentally get caught under the power scrubber and scratch up the floor. Also clean up sticky spills, scrape up gum with a plastic scraper, and just do that first bit of pre-cleaning. Then there's always the question of protection. It depends what kind of trim, transition areas, other things you've got stationed around the area that you're going to be using the remove on. If any of the remove gets on these other areas, will it do any damage? If you're concerned about that, you can tape it off. You can use the drop-down plastic. Just make sure you protect anything that you think needs a little extra protection to prevent any accidents that were unintended. After that, now we're ready to apply. So we're going to apply Bona Remove with our 3/8 inch microfiber roller. Pretty easy to do. We're going to, without putting any pressure on it, kind of roll that out. But there are some other ways you can apply it. You can do that with the Bona applicator pad that fits on the bottom of the Bona mop. You could also use the regular blue Bona cleaning pads that also fit on the bottom of the mop. So we've applied our product now in an area of about 40 to 60 square feet. And it's important now that you don't go too big, because again, very important that we let that product dwell for 5 to 7 minutes and that it stays wet. So if we're applying like too big, 100 or 120 square feet, and by the time we get done applying that, it might be dry up where we started, and we don't want that to happen. If it does happen, then just re-wet or reapply a thinner coat of product to kind of moisten that area back up so it can continue its chemical reaction on the floor. You should also see the polish, if there is actually polish, start to turn kind of grayish, whitish, and that means that the Bona Remove is starting to break down and dissolve that product on there. So make sure you give it the 5 or 7 minutes. The biggest mistake is people get on it too quickly, and then you're just going to have to do a reapplication to make sure it's wetted out to get the rest of the polish or contaminant off. So as soon as we've let it dwell, we can see that reaction kind of happening. Then we're going to go ahead and remove that slurry with our power scrubber going up and back in the same path, typically applying deep clean solution on our forward motion and just cleaning up on our backward motion, moving over and overlapping anywhere from 20 to 50%, depending on what you think you need to do to get that floor thoroughly cleaned and the slurry picked up. And then we're going to repeat that in the main field of the floor if we need to, until we feel we've got all the polish off there. In our example here, we had 4 good heavy coats of Bona polish applied, and it's going to take us a couple applications of the Bona Remove to get it all off with the power scrubber. And then after we've got our field clean, then we want to go back and focus on the edges and detail areas. Now, you may have some Bona Remove still in that area. If it's still wet, great. If not, go ahead and apply a little more with a brush out of the paint tray, or pour some out with the bottle of Bona Remove and spread that out with the brush. Then if you've got a powered non-scratching brush head, you can go ahead and use that. You can also use a hand brush and a little elbow grease to torque those edges and detail areas. Then you can wipe off that slurry either with a dampened microfiber cloth or terry cloth. But you just want to make sure that you keep refolding that and using a clean area so that we get all of that removed residue off the floor and we're not just spreading it around. And so that's it. And then we move on to our next 40 to 60 square foot section. We spread out our Bona Remove, we let it dwell, we take it off with the power scrubber, and then we work the edges and the detail areas. And that's how we're going to utilize the Bona power scrubber with Bona Remove to take off acrylic polishes and or other types of contaminants and just get back to the fresh underlying finish. If you don't happen to have a power scrubber, here's method 2, which is using a 175 RPM buffer and a 1-inch brown stripping / polishing pad. Basically, the process is the same. We're going to spread out Bona Remove with the roller or the applicator pad or the cleaning pad. We're going to let it dwell for the 5 to 7 minutes. But now we're going to put the buffer on there with the brown pad, and instead of the power scrubber breaking up the polish, the buffer and the brown pad will do that, but now the slurry is still on the floor, whereas the power scrubber would have picked it up. So to remove that slurry, we're going to use the Bona mop covers and just keep rinsing them in our water bucket. Or you could use a wet dry vac as we did here. Or you may also want to try a squeegee and a dustpan and just dump that in a garbage can with a liner. So there's a number of ways to still get that slurry off the floor pretty easily without the use of the power scrubber. It just takes a little more work on your side. You can run one more set of Bona microfiber pads across the floor with your Bona mop, just for that final detail rinse and clean and to make sure you got everything wiped up off the floor. Check the edges, check the corners, check the detail areas. And then it's time to clean up, and cleanup is easy with Bona Remove as it's just with water. So whether that's just the brushes on your power scrubber, the squeegees, the recovery tank, your microfiber pads from your Bona mop, easy cleanup with the Bona Remove system. And once you're back down to the underlying finish with either of these methods, you've got 2 choices. You can either reapply polish at this point, or you can just leave it as is and let the natural beauty of that underlying finish shine through. So pretty easy process we've got here. Whether you're using your Bona power scrubber or your 175 RPM buffer, Bona Remove is what you want to use as your game plan to remove acrylic polishes, get your tools lined up, get the polish off with Bona Remove.